Hello, my name is Kelly Hogan, and as a conference producer with Fierce Life Sciences, I have the pleasure of interviewing Dan Jacob, Vice President and General Manager of Real World Data Solutions at LabCorp. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you very much.
To ground us, let's start this conversation with definitions because these terms are often used interchangeably, but they're not the same. What's the difference between real world data and real world evidence?
Kelly, that's a great place to start. Thank you. Real world data is the raw material. It's the digital breadcrumbs that we leave behind every time we interact with healthcare, either actively or passively. It's what's contained in our electronic health records. It's the information in our health insurance claims. It's how we use funds in an FSA. It's the health app on our phone. It's the results of the more than 700 million diagnostic lab tests performed by LabCorp in 2025. It's the data derived from the pulse oximeter that you used when you had COVID, or the scale that we used to weigh ourselves this morning. It's even the data generated by your smartwatch. Real-world evidence is what happens when we apply statistics to those data to generate an answer or an insight. If RWD is the ingredients in our pantry, the eggs, the flour, the sugar, RWE is the finished cake. Data is the what, evidence is the so what. When we bring together real-world data, the combined data sets enable us to generate a more complete view of the patient journey across a broader and more representative population than clinical trials alone. Historically, RWD has informed commercial strategy, but today we see that biopharma organizations are increasingly using real-world data to generate evidence that supports clinical development, regulatory engagement, precision medicine strategies, and to generate differentiated medical evidence.
So, Dan, what does that mean for your role at LabCorp?
Just a little bit of history, Kelly. Before joining LabCorp, I built, scale, and led real-world data teams at two very large biopharmaceutical manufacturers, where we licensed access to third-party data, like many other biopharmaceutical companies. And we discovered that within the electronic health records data that we were licensing, that we very often did not have the diagnostic data, the diagnostic variables that we needed to inform decision-making. And that was a very complicated and perplexing problem to have. And so I was delighted when the opportunity came to join LabCorp and to help the industry close that gap. We generate on the order of 750 million diagnostic lab tests every year that can be leveraged to help our biopharma partners and others inform clinical decision-making, to generate differentiated medical evidence, to help support accelerated clinical trials, to help find patients who have unmet clinical need and individuals who would be suitable to be subjects in a clinical trial. And so I've been incredibly excited about the opportunity to put LabCorp's data to work to support a very broad industry where diagnostic and genetic values are sometimes unavailable or inaccessible.
Thank you, Dan. Now, real world data has moved from being supplementary to increasingly pivotal to development strategy. What was the inflection point for biopharma?
Within my own professional life, I've seen the evolution of these dynamics within the companies I've worked. The availability of digitized healthcare data during the past 15 years has really enabled us to generate evidence at a volume and scale that was difficult to imagine even in 2015. My first exposure to the power of real world data happened at around 2017 when we realized that we could predict which patients had been discharged from a hospital after treatment for a heart attack or CHF or pneumonia who had the greatest risk of being readmitted within 30 days. And we used the data-driven insights to contact at-risk patients and make sure that they were stabilizing at home, had the right medications, and were following their discharge plan. And we found that this very simple outreach using real-world data, which took about 5 minutes, so that the inflection point to which you refer has really sort of two components, maybe three. One, researchers started to see signals in real world settings after drugs were approved by the FDA, by regulatory agencies, that they did not see in clinical trials. So, for example, they observed that a drug approved for one condition started to show amazing results for a related condition among real world patients. And, and we, part of the inflection was that RWD allowed researchers to see these patterns in real time in the messy reality of real life, that potentially led to new treatments faster than starting a 10-year clinical trial from scratch. And then the second dynamic is that because of these insights, because they came to recognize the value and integrity of real world data, particularly genetic and diagnostic data from companies like LabCorp, regulatory agencies started to evolve. They started to see the value of real world data as part of or as a supplement to more traditional submissions. And because of that, they also committed a large number of guidance documents and regulatory changes to support real world data, even going to the point where they have hired experts within their teams who are knowledgeable about real world data so that they can properly evaluate the submissions. The data itself has become less fragmented, higher quality, higher fidelity, especially data obtained direct from producers like LabCorp data that is not computer generated, that's not synthetic, and that is well known to be what we consider to be evidence grade or regulatory grade, up to meeting the standards of rigorous regulatory environments that come to depend on only the highest quality, highest fidelity data, like LabCorp's.
Thank you so much for breaking that down for us. In today's environment of accelerated development timelines and regulatory scrutiny, where do you see the greatest evidence gaps that biopharma leaders need to address? And what were some of the data gaps that you experienced when you led real world data teams within biopharma?
The main challenge facing biopharma manufacturers is around data. The quality and fidelity and provenance of the highest quality data. When I was working in biopharma, where I led, scaled, and built real-world evidence and real-world data teams, we would license access to electronic health records with the goal of extracting diagnostic and genetic values, but they were very often missing. That was a huge gap for us, and one that I came to appreciate that LabCorp is uniquely able to fill. Um, but you asked about sort of the general proposition of what are the system-wide, industry-wide gaps as it relates to data. And that is, and I can give you sort of a list of those. One is latency. So very often, biopharma and payers and CROs leverage data that is not timely, where latency can hinder rapid decision making. They are securing access to data weeks after the signal was detected, which is both problematic and means that they are not pouncing on the signal when it is detected. Um, in some cases, there are challenges with the absence of transparency, making it very difficult to link data or to make reasonable inference from data because of issues of provenance. Very often, biopharma has the potential to use data that's not source verified, which that can be aggregated or that can come together from multiple data sources, which really reduces or should reduce their confidence in the validity of each data element, and is the kind of red flag that would give a regulatory agency deep pause before embracing those data. There are also data sources that are, not compliant with government expectations or requirements, that don't meet the regulatory agency's sort of good housekeeping seal of approval for a variety of reasons. Um, leaving gaps in our ability to audit or to or for regulators to go back to the source where data was obtained. And our customers in particular are expressing a desire for direct access to original, unaltered data streams that give full transparency from the point of capture. Our customers really demand real time or near time visibility into key operational and scientific workflows so that they can trust where the data has come from and be able to explain it with great transparency.
Thank you, Dan. Great point. Now, how should biopharma organizations think about building a sustainable real world data infrastructure that supports longitudinal, clinically relevant evidence generation?
Yeah, we think about this a lot at LabCorp. It's really critical to understand data lineage, methodologies, validation processes. Um, in a perfect world, and this is certainly reflective of our own aspirations, real world data should be de identified and fully privacy protected. It should support tokenization to achieve deterministic matches or links across data sets when that's appropriate, or when multimodal data sets are valuable to tell a richer story across populations. It needs to be recent and complete. Healthcare data is known to be kind of a messy organism, but to the extent that we can, it has to be complete. It has to have the critical data elements that are needed to inform decision making. Um, it needs to have clear provenance. It has to be traceable. It has to be interoperable. It can't be fragmented, both for ourselves and for the insights that we generate, and also as a consideration to our customers who need a data source that they can trust, that doesn't require transformation before they can begin their analytic cycle.
As demand for biomarker and genotype enabled use cases increase, how do you think biopharma will adapt?
So, in my view, biopharma is already adapting to this. They are increasingly, for a wide variety of use cases, demanding biomarker level data to inform medical evidence and to support personalized medicine and customized clinical trial development. This is probably the most important opportunity for us, or will be during the next 10 years as practitioners of real world data and real world evidence. This is a huge opportunity to go from a one size fits all dynamic within healthcare to a custom fit and a bespoke model informed by high quality genetic and diagnostic data. This is critical. We're seeing ecosystem level collaboration throughout biopharma to implement precision medicine. Um, we're seeing this in some of the work that my team is doing at LabCorp around Alzheimer's disease. We're seeing how biopharma is ravenous to get access to genotypic and biomarker data to inform unmet clinical need, to identify precision patients for clinical trials. LabCorp is in a unique position to deliver these real world data insights, um, with a sort of front row visibility into biomarker testing that helps us understand, um, how to reshape every aspect of the patient journey, from early development to discovery to helping patients get the right treatment that they need at the right time. This is an incredibly exciting opportunity, and one where we are really looking forward to using LabCorp's diagnostic and genetic data to help revolutionize the way that healthcare is conducted in this country, and how drug development, targeted precision drug development, is delivered in this country and in many other countries.
That certainly is exciting. Now, what role does genetics play in the diagnostic data landscape?
Genetic information gives us visibility, and it gives us the ability for to interpret variants in diagnosis, to inform those variants as part of a care plan, in trial identification, and even to identify the need for drugs that may not exist, to support patients. This is an area where we have actually a lot of domain expertise. Many patients who have a genetic variant go through a long, costly, non-linear, painful diagnostic journey before they can get a definitive diagnosis. And some of them may be reluctant to pursue genetic testing because they are not aware of it as an option, or it may be costly. And in my view, it's essential that we increase patient access to genetic testing, which will help us, LabCorp real world data, gather more data to understand disease incidence, prevalence, disease progression, that we can use in a wide variety of ways to accelerate clinical development and to improve patient care. One of the gifts that we have is access to the data generated by one of our companies, which we acquired, called Invitae, which is now part of LabCorp, that's developed world-class leading innovative variant interpretation methods so that we can definitively answer questions about patients informed by their genetic data, and get it to their families and their healthcare providers much more rapidly.
And finally, looking ahead 5 years, how do you expect the role of real world data to evolve in regulatory decision making and lifecycle planning? What role will AI play as well?
AI is a galloping horse in our industry. It's going to be used in many different ways to drive innovation and efficiency and to merge together different types of data to inform deeper, richer clinical decision making. But AI is only as strong as the data it's built on. And as these technologies mature, there is going to be a greater and greater reliance and demand for standardization of data, uh, absolute importance of high fidelity, source verified, real world data to serve as the foundation for everything that occurs in AI and machine learning. The other thing that I think is going to happen is the the formation of industry partnerships, maybe even partnerships that were unimaginable even a few years ago, between data providers and technology companies, between data providers and AI companies, between data providers and consumer analytics companies, all grounded in clinically rich data, like the data that we offer at LabCorp RWD, um, but being used with credible, trusted partners to scale analytics and AI capabilities beyond immediate use cases within healthcare. When this happens and is executed in a way that's with two or three deliberate, trusted partners, um, these kinds of data and analytics partnerships or data and AI partnerships accelerate insights generation. They can overall raise the quality and credibility of real world data and the evidence that it's built on. And I think we're going to see an explosion in the types of new drugs that are developed using these combinations and a big accelerator in drug development through these kinds of partnerships.
Thank you very much, Dan. I appreciate the opportunity to take a closer look at this topic with you today.